Today in episode 55 of the podcast, we will be reviewing Wolfman and Season 1 of Star Wars Skeleton Crew. I'm Brad, he's Josh, and this is We'll Bring the Popcorn.
Before we jump into our reviews this week, please don't forget to give us a like and subscription on YouTube, as well as hitting the notification bell, which gives you access to our episodes when they drop every single Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio room, please give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And also go to willbringthepopcorn.com for all our archived episodes, our merch store, all our social media information. Anywhere you can help support us, we really appreciate it.
And we wanted to kick this episode off. It's on the somber note. We had a couple kind of legends in the industries, different industries, but they were in the same industry at times here with, we'll start off with Bob Uecker, because I know that one was when we both saw it. Like, I think I sent you a message saying no, because we saw the legendary Milwaukee Brewers broadcaster, you know, the voice of the Brewers, Bob Uecker. He was also 5 seasons of Mr. Belvedere, but to a lot of people from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it was Major League. And his performance in there of getting to play an announcer, but, you know, amped up because he's drinking heavily and he's talking crap about the team. And, like, he was just so brilliant in the Major League films. But Bob Uecker has passed away at the age of 90.
Just an unbelievable life and career he's had. I mean, we still find ourselves going to baseball games and shouting out quotes from Major League while we're watching the game. We're those guys. We're those guys that do that at baseball games. You know, just a bit outside. You know? Like, we quote Major League every time we go to a Major League game, and Bob Uecker is a big part of that. Just such an iconic role for us who are both fans of film and fans of sports to see that kind of crossover with a legendary broadcaster. Obviously, he was a longtime broadcaster of one of our rival teams in the Milwaukee Brewers, you know, us being Cincinnati Reds fans, but you know, just an absolute legend in both broadcasting and in some of these iconic roles that he's had in film and TV. Just what an unbelievable life he's led. And I know that he has quotes and sayings that are going to stick with us, you know, our entire lives because we use them so frequently.
I mean, there's a ton of quotes that come out of the Major League movies, but I would say probably 75% of them are Harry Doyle and Bob Uecker quotes, just because there were so many memorable ones throughout. Like, he was unbelievably funny in that movie, and just was so good. And he played the surprise aspects when they started winning and everything so well. Like, I will always remember from that. And of course, we also watched Mr. Belvedere a lot when I was a kid. I forgot that it ran for 5 seasons. I thought it was something that was a little bit shorter than that, but you know, that's a decent run for a TV show and stuff. But yeah, our thoughts and everything go out to his family, friends, everybody in the Brewers organization. And it's just kind of crazy. I didn't even realize he was up to 90 years old. So he had a long, good life, but you know, it's just sad to see such a legendary voice, because we also, you know, we had Nuxie. We had Joe Nuxall here, who was the voice of the Reds with Marty Brennaman for so long. Now we don't have either of them. You don't have Bob. Well, I mean, Marty's still alive. He's just off the radio. I want to clarify that. Joe passed several years ago. But, you know, Marty's kind of the last of those kind of 3 legendary voices, because the Dodgers lost their legendary voice, I believe it was last year. So there's a lot of those legendary voices that we grew up with in baseball and announcing and stuff that we don't have very many of them left.
Yeah, it's kind of the last of a dying breed, unfortunately. But yeah, what an unbelievable legendary career. Another person that had a legendary career that we lost this week was David Lynch. He was best known for producing the original Dune film. He also was a big part of the Twin Peaks franchise that, you know, had a couple TV series and a film. Like, he was a big part of that. Mulholland Drive, which in my opinion is one of both the coolest and weirdest films that was ever been made. But legendary person in the business as well, as unfortunately passed too.
Yes, just being a writer and director, so many big things. Like you said, the original Dune adaptation, Twin Peaks, Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet. Huge catalog. He was instrumental to a lot of people getting into the industry.
A musician as well. Like, he had, you know, a career in music too. Just another big time legend in this industry. And, you know, thoughts and condolences go out to, you know, the families of these people who passed. But man, that's two big ones for this week for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sucks to see. Like, normally we say it comes in 3, so my mind was immediately just waiting. All right, so who else is willing? Which stinks to have that mindset, but that kind of is where it goes. It's like, all right, who else are we going to lose this week or when it goes on? But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed David Lynch, and I liked a lot of his film stuff. I haven't seen his full repertoire of everything that he's done, because he also did a whole lot of shorts. So he did a lot of little short films and stuff. But Bob Uecker was the one that just hit me the hardest, just because he was a voice kind of my childhood of, when Major League came out in 89, I think Major League 2 was 1994. So there was a good gap of, me getting towards my teenage years and having the Major League films and stuff and just quoting those from teenage years to still now. It just kind of hit you hard. You didn't even know him, but because from the sports aspect of being a big baseball fan, but also being a fan of those films, it's like, all right, yeah, we don't have Bob anymore.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And we talk about it, especially with our love for the Major League movies. We talked about it in our Guilty Pleasures episode. We talked about it in our favorite sports movies that we talked about. And, just having such a big impact on us, and just a person who was so synonymous with those films and with the sport that you and I both love. Like it definitely hit us. It definitely hit us pretty hard when we both heard that he passed. I know a lot of people like in the same circle that we run with that are big baseball fans and things like that and love those movies as well. Were super affected by Bob's passing, and it just goes to show, like, these people that spend so long in the public eye, like they're all getting up there. Like, how often do you and I sit there and talk about, like, can you believe, like, this actor's 80 now? Like, can you believe this person's in their 70s or in their 80s? Or this person that was, like, super popular when we were teens and in our 20s are, like, in their 50s and 60s and 70s now. And it's crazy to see that passage of time, because it doesn't feel like that when they're so in the public eye for as long as they are. I mean, we're just talking about, Tom Cruise doing all his stunts in Mission Impossible movies still, and he's late 50s or early 60s?
Somewhere.
Like, he's like getting up there in age too, but he's still doing all this. It's just crazy to see, like, with the passage of time, it's kind of eye-opening, like, how quick it goes. You see these people who are in the public for so long reaching that, later years in their life, and you're just like, man, I can't believe this person's that age. Like, it's insane to see just how the passage of time affects people.
You got, like, Keanu Reeves had a career resurgence with the John Wick films, but I think he's now 62. Which
doesn't look like it. He's a vampire. He's a very he's in that Paul Rudd. Like, he could pass for 30.
Paul Rudd is 356 years old, and it's mind-boggling.
You can't convince me otherwise. You really can't. Like, just point us in the direction of the Fountain of Youth. You don't have to tell us where it is, but just, like, please point us in the direction of it so we can find it.
Yeah, our thoughts, our condolences goes to everyone who knew David and Bob, their friends, their family, coworkers, everybody that they're two big losses for both industries because of baseball and with his film and everything, film and TV and everything that Bob did, along with everything that David Lynch touched. Like, just condolences to all his fans, to everyone. It's two big losses for the industry here.
Yeah, I've already gone back and rewatched Major League since the news of his passing. I went and watched that. And, I plan on watching some Twin Peaks in honor of David Lynch as well. So excited to go and check that out again. There's no reason we had to really transition out of that, but we are going to move into our film review of the week. We did go and see Wolfman, the new Universal Blumhouse horror film. It stars, a lot of relatively unknown actors in this, really, but it's about, a family going to basically clear out the home of our main actor Blake's father, who gets confirmed, that at least officially confirmed, that he's passed. It's kind of a bare bones way of putting it. We're going to have to go into some spoilery bits of the film to kind of really talk about it. But, you start off in this film with, Blake and his father, in the woods, and you see his father's this very serious hunter who, is very paranoid about something that's in the woods that he's trying to find. He's trying to hunt, but he's also trying to be very protective of his son, and his son's not allowed to, do anything without his dad's permission, basically, when he's out there. But you get them into this deer blind, and they, this thing comes and, like, scratches at the door, and you don't really get to see what it is. But obviously, if you know what the film's called, you kind of get an idea of
Predator.
What it is. Yeah, it's Predator. Yeah. And but you kind of get a really fast, jump in time with, Blake becoming an adult now with a family of his own, finding out his father's passed, and now they're setting out to kind of clear out the house, and him going back because he has this strained relationship with his father, and, just bringing up a lot of old memories and stuff. And that's kind of where everything really jumps off for the remainder of this film. But what did you think about it? What was your experience with this movie?
This one I was kind of mixed on exactly what I felt, because I enjoyed it, but it also had problems. But it did a lot of things right. It did many things where it could have been a little fuller, because not going to cut around the bush at all. The story was very thin. Like it set up this lore with text at the beginning that, all right, there's this thing known as the face of the wolf is what the legends have called it, that this kind of disease or infection that happened. And then we get a little bit about the strained relationship between Blake and his dad, and then we jump into the future with his, wife and kids. So his wife is Charlotte, played by Julia Garner, so she's a little bit more well-known name out of kind of this whole cast. She will be our Silver Surfer in the Fantastic Four movie coming up. And then Matilda Firth as Ginger, playing his daughter. So she's kind of at the heart and the soul of the movie. But, we get a little bit that the husband and wife dynamic, they're a little strained. They're having some problems. They're both writers. One's a journalist, one's like a novelist. And so he gets that they finally declared his dad dead, even though they haven't found a body. They haven't found him. And when we talk about him living in the middle of nowhere, it is literally in the middle of nowhere. But it kind of takes place in two main areas, because you've got the Pacific Northwest is out in Oregon that his dad lived, but he has his family in New York. So they make the trek out, like, it'll be a good time for us to kind of reconnect as a family, as a husband and wife. We'll go out there, we'll clear out the house, we'll make a little vacation out of it, and then we'll head home. No.
It's a horror film, so it doesn't exactly go the way you hope.
I will give it props at the sound design, because I saw him talking it up a little bit before, was fantastic. Like, it really, you heard everything so crisp and clear, and it played with that a lot. And I did like the dynamic that it gave you visually. A lot of the film is dark, very dark. A lot of people could have problems with that, just how dark it is. We know in Game of Thrones, when they had their dark battle and stuff, how long people talked about just how bad that was to them. I didn't mind it as much. It did set some really good tension. The sound helped a lot, and it did give you some visuals that were good between seeing things from the wife and the daughter's perspective, and then you're kind of switching over to his perspective a little bit more, because, of course, being a horror film, as they get out there, they can't exactly find their way because it's in the middle of nowhere. They end up running into what we briefly got touched on in the intro, that there was another kid that lived around the mountain. We didn't really get much at all, really anything with their relationship, but they kind of meet up, and he's going to take them to the farmhouse. But we end up getting in a car accident that you've seen in the trailer and everything kicks off from there.
Yeah, and you start to see, they get attacked by the wolf. Obviously, it's very gruesome. The family makes their way out. The father gets scratched. We're not spoiling anything that you haven't seen in the trailer at this point, but he gets scratched, and he eventually starts to change over time, and you get this kind of gradual, but it's quick. It's quick and it's gradual, because this is just this whole story, like the whole meat of the story, is taking place over one evening.
Yeah.
Really. So you're getting to see his descent into becoming the werewolf, and how he is slowly starting to change and lose his humanity. He's physically changing. There's some gruesome moments with fingernails and teeth and things like that are a bit on the darker side about his descent into becoming a wolf. And one thing I want to give them a little bit of credit for is playing that dynamic between how a wolf perceives the world and how a human perceives the world, because they do a good job of kind of like rotating between like the family trying to communicate with the dad, but the dad is becoming more wolf and his senses are becoming enhanced. He starts to be able to see, things bright in the evening. Like you get to see this color enhanced, view of the world, and, he's trying to communicate back to them, but he's making little grunts and groans that, obviously a wolf can't make, that a human can understand. So you see that dynamic of it playing back and forth of like, okay, the camera pans over to the humans, and the humans are trying to talk to him, and then it pans back over to him, and he can't really understand what they're saying, but he's trying to, communicate back. And I think they did a good job of playing that dynamic between.
It was a very smooth transition between the two. It really was.
Like they did a really good job of that, and really playing up things from his perspective, like you said, because where it gets super dark, where you're trying to view it through the lens of a human, when it transitions to the view of the wolf, it is more bright and vibrant, because the wolf can see in the dark, whereas the humans can't. And it's a really cool visual play that they do in this movie. But like, just touching on the overall plot of the film, it does seem very thin, like you said. It's not a lot of meat to the story, but it's just basically this overnight turning of this man into the wolf, and like trying to still at the end trying to maintain what little bit of humanity he can, that's still dedicated to his family by protecting them from the other wolf. And then there's a reveal of who that wolf is. It doesn't take a genius to figure out who the wolf is. You kind of have a pretty good idea. You could probably pick it up just by how we're describing this movie and things like that. And it all kind of culminates with this battle with, Blake and this wolf, where they try to kill the wolf, and then he completely turns into the wolf, and there's this back and forth dynamic with the family there, leading to like the end of the film as well. And it's fine setting, like it's a fine moving film throughout the course of the night, but I just wish they gave us a little bit more substance to it.
Yes, I think what they gave us was fine, that it moved pretty decently. Like it was pretty slow going through the transformation, everything, because it's trying to give you that different dynamic. As you said, it's giving you the different views as he's changing. You're seeing different aspects of him and the danger that they have. It keeps tension pretty high throughout, but it's very thin on anything else. You get very little on Blake, you get very little on his wife, you get very little on the kid, very little else past the opening on the dad and everything else. So like it's very thin on the plot. Like once it's done setting up that, all right, now we're getting the Wolfman stuff going, that's the rest of it. That's just, it's about turning and battling and where we go from there. Like it does get pretty thin on, well, I mean, it does an effective job, but it's very thin. Like, are you really supposed to care about these characters? Which you do, but you don't really get a whole lot, because you're like, all right, they're setting up that, there's marital trouble, so they're going out there and they're going to reconcile, and there's something else. And you get a little bit of that, but it's basically one scene past that opening scene setting it up. So there's just very little on setting up a full connection. Like a lot of it, they want you just to kind of connect with the daughter and see everything from the daughter. That's why she's kind of the heart and soul, because she's trying to bring more of the drama elements into it, because it's her dad, and she's trying to figure out what's going on with that. But that's kind of the extent of the connections you get to the characters in the world. But you're talking about the design of the Wolfman and stuff, so we do see a couple variations of it, because we have the one that infects him and then what he's turning into. I've already seen a lot of discourse online over it, a lot of people not liking it, because when you think of Wolfman, you're thinking of the classic universal monster. You're looking for a full, big, like altered beast type of big furry werewolf and stuff. And it's not as over the top, but it makes sense in how they told this story, that it's a disease that kind of takes over the body and they slowly transform, because you can see a difference between, our main one and the previous one of how they look. One looks a lot more advanced, looks more like a Wolfman, while the other one looks a little more deformed and crazy out there. I get what they were trying to do with that. I didn't mind it at all. Like, it's not the traditional Wolfman that you're looking for, but I think it fit their story, kind of like what he did with the Invisible Man, changing that up to be, a suit and everything else that ended up being, which a lot of people enjoyed what he did with the Invisible Man there. But here with the Wolfman, a lot of people are like, well, I wanted to see a full werewolf. And it's kind of spoilery, but you kind of already seen, they've already put the footage out there of the transformations and the looks, and they've had it at Universal Horror Nights and stuff, everything else out there. But I didn't mind it.
Yeah, but I think the counter argument to that I would make would be that, this is an overnight transformation of a guy. You don't really get to see his final form in the movie, because it takes place in one night. The other wolf that you see that looks more advanced has probably had significantly more time as a wolf, because, for circumstances that get explained in the movie, they've had more time to be a wolf. And, this is just an overnight change, and he's just beginning to kind of get into that transformation. So I don't necessarily understand the discourse, like, just because he's starting to change, he becomes full werewolf in less than a night. Like, I don't buy that either. Like, I think that's something that would probably come over the course of time. So that would be my counter argument to that. Like, you don't get to see, like, the full form of this wolf because it's one night in a movie. You know what I mean? Like, if you didn't, like, there's no jump forward in time in this either. Like, you don't get to see what could have potentially happened in 10 to 15 years. I'm not going to spoil the end of the film, whether or not everybody makes it out or what have you, because, I want you to go see the film and draw these own conclusions for yourself. But I know it's interesting you talk about wanting to, like, care about the characters and everything, and I think they do, like, that's where I do think the film lacks in some instances, making you care about it, because you get the whole, she's kind of a daddy's girl. Like the daughter is kind of a daddy's girl. They have a really close relationship, but she's not as close with her mom because her mom appears to be a bit more of a workaholic, being a journalist, whereas dad, being a novelist, doesn't really have an office to go to or other obligations, so he's home more to help and take care of the kid. So their bond is stronger, and the mother feels the type of way about it, and hopefully with them going out and taking that family trip, the hope is that she could bond a little bit more with her daughter and get a little closer. And they do play a lot with that. A little bit, not quite a lot, with that dynamic throughout the film of, the father transforming and then, the mother and daughter bonding through trauma. It's a trauma bond that they wind up having to share in this movie because, she does have this close relationship with her dad. Well, her dad's obviously turning into a werewolf, so there's not a whole lot, there's not a promising future there. Mm-hmm. So they kind of have to, for lack of a choice, bond because of it. And I think they do a decent enough job of showing that. I think it could have been a little better. Maybe have the mom have a stronger save to kind of have the daughter really play up the fact that she's, thankful for her mom in that case. In some cases, like they didn't really, I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah, it didn't really capitalize on that of the mom and daughter kind of had. They really only got the trauma bond, as you said. They just kind of got that because we didn't see the daughter seeing her mom kind of in a different way. It was all centrally focused on the dad and everything around him, which was a great performance by Christopher Abbott, who played Blake, because, he had to play this dad who's a stay-at-home dad, and, he's trying to be open and honest with his wife that things haven't been great and that we need to go this. I haven't had a great relationship with my dad, and the transformation, because he does have to kind of play it very... All right, now I'm slowly starting to change. He's got a little bit of depth to that performance because he has to show the different levels that he's going from his injuries to, the change. And I will give big props to the practical design of this movie. Like, there's very little more probably with the lighting, unless they were able to do that practically when they switched to the wolf and stuff. It was all done practically. So you've got a lot of kind of creature work and everything done with practical makeup, but you also got some gruesome stuff with, like, his body realigning to be more, wolf-like, and the arm and everything else that he had injured. But it's like I said, it still did have its issues of where there's a lot of standing around just kind of looking at the Wolfman and other things like that. Or it's like, hey, we have a multi-floor house that we're in and a basement that only has one way in and out, but we're going to spend the whole time in the living room that has like 400 windows and a wooden door and stuff behind it that... I mean, clearly this thing has strength, but it never really tries to do much to get into the house other than when it finally does. Yeah. But I will give huge props for the practical with the makeup and everything else that they did for the creatures and the gore and the blood and everything else. That was done really well. And for the sound design. The sound design was really fantastic. You heard it well. It was well shot overall. Like I said, it was very dark, because it took place after midnight for the most part, and very visually dark, and the story was tonally dark as well, and there were some decent performances, but it did lack on that connection to the characters, that you didn't get that full connection to the story and everything that was going on with it, but I still enjoyed it. That was a thing why I'm kind of back and forth on it, because like sound design was good, the practical effects were good, it kept tension going pretty strong, but it was just, as you said, it's basically 3 days. So if you go back to the opening, which is him as a kid, and then the day of them in New York finding out about everything, and then the third day is where 90% of the movie happens. Yeah. And it takes place in just a very short amount of time. There's a very small cast altogether, couple locations, like 2 locations overall, other than the woods, a farmhouse, and New York. And so it's very bare bones and minimum on that. So it gets some knocks for that, just because even though I enjoyed it and I was connected, I was in it, it needed a little bit more, especially if you're setting up. Did you really need to have that the wife and the husband are having marital problems when it didn't really focus or matter too much into it? Like, you get a little bit of the distance between them that sets some stuff up that, well, because maybe their distance, she's not seeing that he's hurt and that he's, changing that quickly and other stuff like that. But she immediately goes into taking care of him and, worrying about him and taking care of things. So you don't really get that payoff of like, oh, just, I don't know. It's like they both finally realize how much they actually care about each other, but we don't get that much depth to really care that happened.
Yeah, I agree with that because, like you said, they talk about it at the beginning of the film, like the issues that they're having. Like, I think the main focus is Blake in this movie and like his wanting to take care of his family and like even him trying to hold on to that part of himself as he's becoming the wolf because you see where as he's becoming more wolf, he's still finding ways to protect the family, like protect his wife and kid, especially from the other wolf before he completely loses himself into being the wolf, and that's kind of like the near end of the film where he fully becomes wolf, and then you have some tension there as well. But it took a long time to get to that point, but I think he did a good job of, like you said, playing that duality of becoming a wolf and still being that father of the house, protector of the family kind of thing that he prided himself on being. But yeah, we didn't get that real emotional payoff in this film between, him and his wife because of all the circumstances that go into him becoming the wolf to begin with. But yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I don't really feel like it didn't really add anything to what was actually happening in the film that making me really care about that dynamic in their relationship, really, because I think you would have still gotten the same effect out of the film had everything been fine. And the only strained, tension relationship in this whole thing was between him and his dad to begin with.
Yeah.
I don't really think that dynamic between Charlotte and Blake really added anything to the film.
Yeah, it did.
In my opinion. But, you get the wonderful relationship between the dad and his daughter where, have their whole thing. Like, they have this cute, interpersonal dynamic. It's like, can you guess what I'm thinking? I'm thinking you're the prettiest girl in the world. You're thinking I'm the prettiest girl in the world. He's like, brilliant. You get it every time. That made me laugh because it's like, I could see that dynamic between a father and daughter. But outside of that, it didn't really care about I really couldn't care less about the dynamic between Blake and Charlotte. Be honest with you, it didn't really do anything for me in the film, and it just wasn't really necessary.
And the problem with that is that both actors did fine. It wasn't any of the performances were bad at all between them. It was just you didn't get a whole lot between them. You didn't get to see really why, other than they set up that he's unemployed and being a stay-at-home dad, and she's working all the time as a journalist, and they're not spending a whole lot of time together, which is kind of the norm, basic relationship problem type of thing. But it just didn't capitalize on that. So in the end, Wolfman was a decent horror film. It had some great sound design, very good practical effects and stuff. It kept a good amount of tension, but it didn't get you connected to this world and the mystery behind the Wolfman all that much. Didn't get you connected to the characters as much. So I would still kind of put it around a 6.5. I still enjoyed it. That's a thing that I'm kind of mixed on this movie. Like I enjoyed the film, but it could have been so much better if it had a little bit more depth to it.
Yeah, I would say I was honestly going to give it around a 5.5 to a 6 myself. Probably landing more on the 5.5 side of it, if I were to say, just because the lack of the thin plot doesn't necessarily help. What really bumps up this movie for me are like you said, sound editing's brilliant, the dark visuals of the film, and that dynamic between the point of view of the wolf versus the point of view of the humans really like adds to the help of the film. But it's just so thin on plot, it's so thin on character development in any sense of the word, really, that it really knocks the film down for me. But I still enjoyed the movie. Like the movie itself, when they really get to the transformation of the Wolfman is where it really takes off, and I think it took a little bit too long to get there, in my opinion, and they didn't really dive into that too much. I think had they spent more time, like you said, around the lore of the wolf and outside of the the text at the beginning and like the actions of the wolf itself, like really understanding why that was important and necessary, I think could have bumped it up a little further for me. But I still got enjoyment out of the film. The acting performances are fine despite the limited stuff that they're given. For that reasons, I'll give it a 5.5 to a 6, probably landing more on a 5.5 in my opinion. Had the plot of the film been a little stronger, I could have easily bumped it up to where you had it at 6.5 or so.
Yeah, and I think that's where we both kind of see it. Like, if it just gave us a little more strength to care about these characters and what's happening to them, it could have been a much stronger film and much more dynamic film, because there wasn't a whole lot that was exactly wrong with the film. It was just thin. Yeah. It just didn't have a lot of meat to it. It was basically, we're setting up that there's a Wolfman. Here's everything that happens because of it. And it's just that. Like, it's one night overall that takes it. And if it just gave us a little more depth, because I kind of thought going in that they'd get to the the house and stuff, and they'd have a dynamic of where they're trying to figure out stuff with the relationship, and the daughter seeing how he grew up and lived and everything else, and we didn't get any of that. So we kind of just wanted a little bit more depth to the characters in this world, and especially like we said with the Wolfman and the lore behind it, you get the text at the beginning of the movie, and then that's kind of it. That's where we stop and stay with the Wolfman. That's like all we get on what is exactly happening here. So again, it's just depth with the overall lore of Wolfman, but also a little bit more depth of the characters. Probably could have brought this up to being one of the best horror films of the year in January already, to kicking it off if it just had more depth to it.
Yeah, I agree. That definitely would have elevated the film for me. Like you said, a little bit stronger character development, a little bit more diving into the interpersonal relationship between, the husband and the wife, and they do a fine job in the father-daughter aspect of it. Not even really dealing so much with the distance in the mom and the daughter, even really, because they don't really dive too far into that, other than the daughter's a little standoffish with the mom because she's close with the dad. And it was just a little bit messy and a little bit thin at that point. I think if they'd have buttoned that up, it would have gotten a better score from me also. But I think that's a good place to kind of leave it. Please go see the movie for yourself and, judge it. If you think we're totally off base in our evaluation of the film, let us know in the comments. Give us a comment on any of our social media posts. Come to our YouTube video. Leave a comment what you thought about the film as well. But Wolfman is in theaters now. Please go check it out and let us know what you think. Do you think we're off base, or do you agree? Do you think it could have been better than what they gave us?
So yeah, heading over into our TV breakdown of the week, we have Star Wars Skeleton Crew Season 1 from Disney+. So this stars Jude Law and a bunch of kids as kind of it was described as it, and it ended up being like it, as a Goonies in space in Star Wars. So, the main story revolves around this planet At-Aten. It's about 5 years after Return of the Jedi that all this has happened in this planet. The kids find it boring. They don't like what they're doing. They're having to be very specific with what they do in school. And we're getting to placement tests where it's basically telling every kid in school what kind of job you're going to do on this planet. So we're kind of got on with this militarized planet that we have these droid and robots that are taking care of the safety and overlooking, and you have to abide by a lot of rules. But of course, it's little kids who are heading towards, from what are they, about 8 to 12 years old, somewhere in that range. And they're like, I don't want to be this. And it does center around one main boy with Wim, played by Ravi Conyers. Sorry for butchering your name. I do that often. That's what I do. Yep. And because he's like obsessed with Jedi, so he wants to see more than what the world is going on right now. Because again, it's 5 years after Return of the Jedi, so they still kind of know about the Jedi and know what's going on. We don't really know how many Jedi are still alive, but he's obsessed with that, and he wants to see more than At-Aten has been giving him.
Yeah, and it's a really fun. The show is actually a lot of fun. I was kind of up in the air on whether I was going to like it or not, but it is the way as you describe it. It's like a Star Wars version of the Goonies, right? So you take this ragtag group of kids. You got Wim, you got his best friend Neil, and then you get KB and Fern as well, or the other two kids that kind of meet up, and they discover this ship. By the end of the first episode, the ship is just lying there dormant. They don't realize it's a ship. They get in there, and then the ship just completely starts to take off and go out into space, and they set off on this adventure outside of their planet where they're not really permitted to leave. There's this barrier around this planet that kind of helps protect it as well, and they venture out into space and start going on these adventures. And the first planet they go to, kind of, they get caught by these. They get caught and thrown in the brig, basically,
like
by these pirates. Port. Yeah, they make it to a pirate port, and they have all these flashy credits that everybody's like, ooh, and eyeing. And then you kind of get it jumped off there, where they get thrown in jail, where they meet Jude Law's character, Jadna Norwood, who is, come to find out is force sensitive. He's got Jedi abilities, and you're like, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? You don't know. And they do a fun job over that season, kind of playing that dynamic where you realize that he's not the noble type of Jedi. He's very much a pirate in his own right, and having his own ambitions and things. And coming to find out where these kids are from, it's a planet apparently nobody outside of that planet has heard of, unless you know deep, deep Star Wars lore. And it's just a ton of fun on these adventures that these kids get to go on.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a ton of fun, especially after last year where we had the Acolyte that we had very high hopes for, ended up just not doing well by its story. Kind of like what we talked with Wolfman, it needed more depth and need more clarity of the story. Acolyte needed that. But this, was 8 episodes long, but I felt like we got a solid story. We got some great connections with the kids. We got a little bit with their parents, and the parents were meant to be kind of side parts, and they just play their roles. But Jude Law was fantastic. Like, he was really good as that dynamic back and forth, good guy, bad guy, bad guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy, kind of changing and playing his own way. And he was a lot of fun. Like, I was kind of surprised to see him show up in Star Wars, even though he's done Harry Potter and other things now with the, Fantastic Beasts films, and he's done more of the fantasy roles, but it wasn't something I expected to see him show up in Star Wars. But he was really good. He was really fun to watch, especially it looked like he was having a lot of fun as well, playing this pirate snide guy that just kind of only cared about himself and money.
Yeah, I think I found the proper connection. It's Goonies meets Pirates of the Caribbean. And Jude Law is, for lack of a better term, the Jack Sparrow of this show, right? So he does a couple things that make you think like, okay, maybe there's a little bit of hope for him to be good, and then you see this thing where he's on his own agenda and trying to get his own things done, very much like a Jack Sparrow would. Whereas in this case, you're not exactly rooting for him. I think that's where the differences would come in, but the parallels are there, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's very much obviously with space pirates, so it's like Goonies meets Pirates of the Caribbean kind of thing, where you kind of go back and forth. But yeah, they these kids are ultimately getting out on this adventure. Now they're just trying to get back home. They're like, okay, we've seen, we've ventured out, but we know we're going to be in a lot of trouble when we get home. And, they get on this race to get back to not only find where this planet is, because they make this hyper jump and they're somewhere on the other side of the galaxy. They don't know where they're at. Now they're trying to make it back to their home planet. And now these pirates are aware of what it is, and there's this big lore about what Ad-Atten actually is. So everybody's trying to find it, and it's a race to get back there. And you just get on these all kinds of fun adventures with these kids who are very much like, they're smart, but they're kids. They're still kids. They have kid-type tendencies. They're helpless in a fight for the most part, obviously, because they're small and
they make kid decisions. They're
trying
to act adult,
like kids acting like adults at times, and it's very fun. It's a funny dynamic, and they make things you're just like, yep, these are kids that we're dealing with, and it's a really fun story. Like, I really wound up liking it more than I thought I would. Like I said, it's got a couple fun cameos. One of my favorite cameos is seeing Jaleel White, who we know is Steve Urkel, playing a space pirate named Gunter in this. Has more than one appearance in the show as well. Like, in this season, it's a ton of fun.
There is a Wolfman.
There is a Wolfman. I was just getting to that. The Wolfman pirate, who's kind of like Jod's number 2, but now he's taken over the ship. They mutinied, like the ship that this crew that Jod was running. Now Jod's trying to get back in their good graces. Like I said, very much like a Jack Sparrow in this case. Like, it's a lot of fun. Like, they write this so well. And I gotta say, one thing I really wanted to highlight in this review is it's 8 episodes long. The 8th episode, in my opinion, has so much fun Star Wars stuff in it. Episode 8 is the quintessential Star Wars-ish episode in this entire run, where everything else felt kind of Goonie and Pirates of the Caribbean-ish. Episode 8 is very much a Star Wars episode. Fans of Star Wars will love it. There's so much cool stuff that happens in the 8th episode, the season finale, that could potentially set up more than one season. I don't know. Do we have confirmation?
I don't know if there's confirmation yet, but it definitely set up for season 2.
It definitely did, but the 8th episode was very much a Star Wars. You get a lot of Star Wars stuff in that last episode, and it was really cool and really well done in a way that Acolyte never fully got to capture, but this one very much felt like a fun Star Wars, and that seems to be a lot of the sentiment I'm seeing from people that have watched this, was that, episode 8 itself, like, all the other episodes are fun and good, and a good linear story that they're telling on these adventures that these kids have trying to get back home, but obviously episode 8 is back at Ad-Atten, where they finally do make it home, and you get this really cool, very Star Wars-y type episode that it was really, really, really solid cap to the end of this first season.
I want to throw in one more comparison that I had with you throwing in Pirates of the Caribbean, which makes a whole lot of sense, is Treasure Planet.
Yeah, very much
It's
so.
a fantastic
Yes.
Disney animated film
Agreed.
that's a cult classic that everyone's chomping at the bit to get another one or a live action of that. It was Goonies, Pirates of the Caribbean, Star Wars, and Treasure Planet, and it did a great mix of all of those.
Yes.
Like, it didn't
It's fun.
really fail. It was a lot of fun. Like, it's got the corniness as
course.
well with stuff, but that's Star Wars.
Yeah,
I
it's very
mean, if
cheesy.
you go back and watch the originals, they were corny and they were cheesy, but we love them still. But yeah, I think they did a fantastic job bringing this to life. Like, the series did get better as it went on, like, especially even like visuals. Like, the first episode, at Atten, you could see a lot of the green screen. You could tell that they're in front of green screens, and a lot of the stuff is CGI and, not really there. You could really see it, but by the 8th episode, like, it looked fantastic. Like, everything fit and looked well and didn't seem like they were in front of green screens and anything else. So, like, just acting, story, visuals, everything just slowly built up into that great crescendo at the end with, you've got ship battles and lightsabers and just a whole lot of stuff that was going on. And you, like I said, you did get a great dynamic behind the kids. That was where you really got the Goonies, other than the kids going on this adventure and taking the ship, but you got a lot of bonding and you've got a lot of character building between these, only if like these two are friends and these two are friends, but you really got them all caring about each other in the end. And they did a fantastic job of telling this story. Like, I was pleasantly surprised at how they did this because, like I said, we had one letdown in the Star Wars universe last year. This started in December, but it really capped off like, all right, do more Star Wars series and things like this. It gave us something kind of fresh and original while also giving that nostalgia and bringing in those aspects of Star Wars that you really enjoy. But we got great performances and great story, and I was happy with this series at the end. Like, I want to kind of go back and rewatch it because I had so much fun with it.
Yeah, the kids do a great job of, just being kids. Like, they really don't feel like they have to act too hard in this, and some of the way they wrote them, the way their decisions are made. Like, I think they did a really good job of portraying the kid aspect, like, in this, and it's very much geared towards kids. This is a TV PG show, so if you're looking for like a bunch of super serious, dark, Sithy type stuff, you're not going to get that with this. This is much more of a lighthearted, just adventure rump for these kids trying to make their way around to these planets. You got pirates chasing them, and it's just funny and absurd, but you get some really cool, fun stuff. You get some really cool speeder chases. You get cool ship chases. And I'm trying to remember the name of the droid that's the co-pilot. Was it 33 or 38? I can't remember.
I think 33.
Yeah,
30,
I think it's 33, but the robot that's on the kid's ship that kind of changes allegiances based on who's the captain of the ship, and there's some fun back and forth on.
Especially like in the later episodes when they
it's
try to tell the droid something, he's trying to make up his mind. Close enough.
Right, and it's so fun. The droid was a lot of fun in that one too. Really kind of added to the overall enjoyment of the show for me. But we had such a good time like watching this that it's definitely one that I could go back and watch again because it is, like I said, they're short episodes. There's not an episode longer than 45 minutes, so you can binge these fairly quickly. It's an easily digestible show, one that you can go back and watch. We did kind of the weekly viewing of it, but this is one I do want to kind of go back and binge and watch all the way through. I think I'll still get the same enjoyment out of it. Episode 1, in my opinion, was a little bit of a slow build until they got there, but I think after they took off from the first episode, everything kind of ran really smoothly. Like you said, you could see there were a little bit of like a rough lift off on the show, but once it got going, man, this was so much fun. The pirates are fun. They're all very, stereotypically piratey and only concerned with, treasure and
gold and
things
plundering.
That's like that is a very, very piratey, and it's written in a way that's a ton of fun and enjoyable for everyone to watch. It's very much a family show. Get in. If you got kids, watch it with your kids. You don't need kids to enjoy it either. Like, I got a lot of enjoyment out of this show as well. And it was a ton of fun for sure.
Was I the only one who felt like almost everybody was struggling with saying the name of the planet though in the series because it was this planet's called at Atten, but that's kind of how they said it. It was at Atten. Like, they were kind of struggling to get at Atten out because it's not exactly the easiest thing to say because you've got a lot of A's and a lot of T's back to back. So it's at Atten. Especially the kids when they said it was we need to get home to Atten. Like, there was some pauses and delays because I felt like a lot of them. It's a little nitpicky, but it did kind of take me out a little bit because they phonetically were having some kind of issues of saying this planet's name.
Part of the funniness was the absurdity with which people were trying to say the name of the planet. Mm-hmm. But you also get like a fun mystery about what exactly this planet is and why it's being protected. And you don't really understand because they start talking about like the great work and the things that they're doing. You don't really understand what it is. And then you get to the reveal of the planet and what they're actually doing there. And you're like, oh, now I get why it's as protected as it is. And you're like, okay, obviously with pirates involved, you very much understand why it's a planet that they're trying so hard to protect and keep people away from. And it's just a fun adventure. It's just a fun adventure show, man. I had such a good time watching this.
Yeah, we also got some fun creatures in here because we got some more elephant-like alien creatures. You know, the Wolfman, he was kind of... We've had a character like that in Star Wars before, so we got some familiar, some new. We also got an owl character, an owl alien character and stuff as well that, you know, played a role, but it was kind of minor. So I'm looking to see if they do head into a season 2, which I hope they do head into a season 2, that we get a little bit more about her and about that part of it and exactly kind of where she comes from and all that, and get a little bit more depth on that, and also get a little more depth on the planet because we got the big reveal. But, you know, we're 5 years after Return of the Jedi. There's still a lot of mystery of just how everything is kind of working and doing, and, you know, who exactly is hiding it, because the you know, good guys, is the bad guys hiding it? Are they both kind of using it? We could get a lot of mystery potentially around this planet. Because, I mean, I don't want to spoil too much about who shows up and what we see and stuff there, but I still think there's a little bit more past that we could have with the mystery in it. But, yeah, in the end, all I can really say, it was a ton of fun. Like, I just had a lot of fun with this series. The kids did great. They said... After the first episode, it really picked up. You got a lot of great visuals and everything. The CGI got better. I don't know if it's because when they did the pilot and what they had to run through there, or if they had because it's kind of weird now with series anymore, because it used to be you'd get a pilot and it might not be till 6 or 7 months later if you got a pickup to really do the series. But with these streaming shows, I don't know if they really do the pilot anymore, if they go straight into it. But it kind of felt that way, in that, you know, kind of little rougher visuals. It set up the lore and the characters, but the show really took off on episode 2 and beyond.
Agreed, and it's one of those that I'm excited to see if they do. It's one of the things I find refreshing about it is you can tell it's very much in the Star Wars universe, but it's not. It doesn't have anything to do with Sith. It doesn't really have anything to do with anything Skywalker related. It's not. It's very loosely connected to everything you know about Star Wars, and I really like that they're willing to kind of go out and explore other parts of the galaxy that aren't exactly in the middle of the fighting. You deal with some New Republic stuff that you kind of that keeps it a little bit connected to what you already know has happened in Star Wars, but you don't have to be necessarily a Star Wars fan or a big Star Wars nerd like we are to kind of really get enjoyment out of the show, because it's very, very loosely connected to anything you may know, which I found to be a lot of fun and refreshing, because it doesn't have to be like this. The galaxy's full of all different types of people. It doesn't have to just be rebels and, you know, the Empire just going back and forth at it.
You can have an Urkel.
We get plenty of that. You get Urkel in here as a pirate. Like, you can have fun stuff like that. But in the end, you know, Star Wars Skelton Crew is a fun family show, one that we got a lot of enjoyment out of. If you're a fan of the Goonies, if you're a fan of Pirates of the Caribbean, if you're fans of Treasure Planet, if you're fans of, you know, Star Wars and things like that, this is very much a show that you can get a lot of enjoyment out of. It's a fun story, follows along on the adventures of these 4 kids who leave their home and are just trying to find their way back. I got so much enjoyment out of this. I'm going to give it probably a 7.5 out of 10 if I were to rate this season. Like, it's got some cheesiness. It's got some issues with the liftoff. I think they really stuck the landing strongly, though, that really helped me get a lot of enjoyment out of this. So it definitely bumps it up to a 7.5 for me. I'm really excited to see now that they've got their voice on this show where they really go from there, because I could see potential for this turning into a 3 or 4 season probably fun romp as these kids get a little bit older and maybe start to branch out and go on more adventures, or we get something similar, you know, to move this plot forward, as they do kind of leave things open at the end of this first season where they could potentially go. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Skeleton Crew. It had some great acting by the kids. Jude Law was just a ton of fun to watch, as you said, kind of building his own Jack Sparrow character in the Star Wars universe. And it was a lot of fun to see Julia White show up because, of course, kids of the 90s know him that, hey, he get to say he's part of Star Wars, the Star Wars universe now, which is great for him. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like, the first episode was a little shaky with the visuals. It really took off, and it just didn't stop. It just kept building and building and building until episode 8, which was a great ending to it that left plenty open if they are going to return for a season 2. I'm going to give it an 8. I think I had a lot of fun with it. I just really enjoyed it. It brought me back to kind of the classic Goonie storytelling of Treasure Planet, of Pirates of the Caribbean. It was just pure fun and enjoyment that I think it outweighed the negative and the issues that I may have had, because it told its story well. It had a few, like, it could have done a few things better here and there, but overall it told its story really well, and I had fun diving into this universe that I really hope that we get to return for a season 2.
Yeah, for sure. It's got a lot of potential now that I think it's really found its voice. And I think if they got a season 2 and they could tell another set of stories, I really think this has got potential to take it kind of the next level, have a lot of fun. The kids are great in it. They're written very well. They're acted very well. It'd be fun to see them get a little bit older and go out on another adventure and have, set off for something else. Maybe something that would cause them to go back off world for something would be a ton of fun. Or if they want to start with maybe another group of kids somewhere else, maybe that's another thing. I don't know where they would potentially go with a season 2, but the bones are there for another season. Definitely one worth checking out. Star Wars Skelton Crew is available now. First season is all on Disney Plus. Go check it out. It's a ton of fun. Come let us know what you thought about it in our Discord, on our YouTube videos, on our social media posts, anything. If you watched it, let us know what you thought.
So coming up this week, we have a couple movies coming to theaters. So we have Flight Risk, which is, even though they don't say it in the trailer, it's a Mel Gibson directed film with Mark Wahlberg playing a pilot who is taking a witness to go testify with an agent, but of course things don't go right. We also have the film Inheritance coming out this week as well, so we have a couple smaller films this week, but I do have to say Flight Risk I'm looking forward to, but it's really interesting that they've decided that we know the controversies behind Mel Gibson and everything, but they have made sure in everything that they've done for the promotion of this movie that they don't show that he is the one who did it.
Yeah, which is a very interesting choice, right? I mean, obviously you're trying to sell the movie and make as much money off of it as you can. The story itself looks interesting. I'm excited to check it out and talk about it. Hopefully it's one that we can come back and rave about how much we enjoy, but you just never know. It's a mixed bag. It does have, Topher Grace as well. Topher Grace and Mark Wahlberg in this film, so definitely one that we're excited to check out.
It's probably worth it alone just to see Mark Wahlberg with the horseshoe balding haircut. Very much looking forward to that. Over on demand, there was a surprise drop of Kraven the Hunter on January 14th, so you can go back on our archives to see what we thought about that. That's the end of the Sony Spider-Verse as we know it for now. Yeah. But we also have coming up this week is Nosferatu and Sonic the Hedgehog 3 on January 21st, so 2 films that you can also go back in our archives and see our reviews that came out towards the end of the year. Ones that we really enjoyed and had a lot of fun with, and I know my kids are chomping at the bit to be able to watch Sonic 3 at home.
Yeah, those were both a ton of fun. Go back in our archives, like we said, and check out what we thought of those. Definitely not surprised that Kraven got the quick drop on it, and they just kind of quietly released it out there. Just get it out there. You can watch it or you can not watch it. But it's an interesting end to the Sony, this weird amalgam of movies that we've got where you have all these Spider-Man villains, but no Spider-Man, and that's definitely a choice by Sony. So that's kind of where I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, heading over on the TV side, we have Prime Target Season 1 on Apple TV Plus on January 22nd. So that was one that we covered a little bit in the 2025 preview. You can go back and look at all the shows are coming out. That's kind of a math-centered mystery show on Apple TV Plus, which, like you said, Apple TV Plus has some of the best TV shows out. They just don't do a great job of advertising their shows that they're actually out there. Like, hey, we've got Shrinking and Ted Lasso and Silo and Severance and all this, but only if they're out in the award season do you really hear about them. Past that, it's like, oh, Severance, like I heard more about it after the season was over and season 2 was coming out than I ever did when it first premiered. So we still hope Apple is able to up their game a little bit more and letting people know, like, we've got some great shows for you to watch. You just don't know about them.
Incredible. They're the worst about promoting themselves. I kind of feel like Apple's approach, and I don't know if they'd ever admit it publicly, is just let word of mouth spread, and then they get all this critical acclaim. Maybe that'll spark interest in the show. We could save money on advertising that way.
We'll just hold on to our billions and billions and billions we have stockpiled.
Yeah. So many fantastic shows on that service. Like, for bang for your buck, in my opinion, Apple TV Plus is the best for finding original content, for just quality TV shows for the amount of money that you have to pay for the service. It's still probably, it might still be the cheapest streaming service out there as far as like cost per month. And the quality is on par with anything you'd find on Netflix or any of the other services, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you've got like Monarch for your monster stuff, and there's a lot of good shows on Apple TV Plus.
Yeah, get your stuff together, Apple. I know you've got the money for marketing. Like, come on, what are we doing here?
We also have The Night Agent Season 2 on Netflix, premieres on January 23rd, and then one that, it's another one of those kind of odd ones, Watson Season 1 on CBS on January 26th. So it's Sherlock Holmes Watson as an investigator, but it's all modern day and everything. So they've played with a lot of these things lately, that we're going to take an old character and bring them into the modern day, but we're still going to try to make it feel like it's that Sherlock Holmes mystery, but we're doing it in a modern way. I'm not sure exactly how I feel about them doing that with Watson here, but it could be interesting. But it's those, another one you kind of feel maybe they're running out of ideas. Or they'll just take Sherlock Holmes' character without Sherlock Holmes and bring him in and give him his own show, but let's make it in modern day.
Yeah, see if they care about it. One of the things that I think well, I know that they've had success with is, Kathy Bates' run as Matlock. Like, they're bringing back Matlock with Kathy Bates as the Matlock character, and it's done incredibly well. It's very well, critically well received. So, maybe hopefully they have another hit on their hands, and this winds up being another really quality show. But yeah, the jury's out for it for sure. But starting January 26th, we get a chance to check it out. So if you give it a shot, you like it, let us know what you think.
But you also make sure you check out a lot of your regular TV shows and programming is coming back after the winter break. So here in the end of January into early February, you're going to have a lot of your shows that are going to have their second half coming on. So make sure you check the program schedules, as we always call it. I don't even know what they refer to it anymore, if it's still a program schedule, if they go for something else. Like,
check your local
check the TV guide.
Yeah.
What's a TV guide?
I missed that so much. That was so much fun, where you just had to sit there and watch it scroll through. God forbid you turned on the channel for the channel you were actually wanting to watch the final. You had to sit there and wait till it scrolled all.
Or you'd get the printout of it, and you'd have to go through and like, all right, so that's going to be on Thursday. Okay, let me see what's Friday. Okay, yeah, we're old. Deal with it.
Or the little handheld TV guide magazines that would come out that had all the schedules for the upcoming week or two of programming with little news articles and stuff in them. Those were a ton of fun too. Yeah, this is pre-internet, folks, so we existed before the internet. I know that's crazy.
But yeah, make sure you check and see where your favorite shows are going to be coming back for the second half of their seasons. Here, we even got some, like The Rookie. I think their season is just premiering now because of the strikes and everything else that happened. They ended their last season early, and they didn't really start on this season till late. So I think its full premiere is coming this year. So we got some coming back from the beginning of the season. We also have the second half of a lot of seasons. So make sure you check on your favorite shows to see when they're coming back after the winter break here, because we're heading into that stretch where all the shows are coming back until they're off the air, normally around May.
Yeah, until you get that big sweeps week where you get the end of seasons, and then it jumps into all the summer programming. That's always an exciting time for sure. But that's going to do it for this week's episode. Can't thank you enough for your continued support. Next week, we are going to be reviewing the Mel Gibson, Mark Wahlberg-led film Flight Risk, as well as we're going to review the final season of Marvel's What If on Disney+. Excited to talk about that show as well. Until next time, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we'll see you next week.